I think a real possibility is that the institutions that we know of are dying. Institutions like science, organizational theory, sort of the um, big higher education stuff, right? So big education, and I think it's a real possibility, largely because of the democratization of information that's happening around the world. So what do I mean by that? I think a lot of people are starting to see that they can learn a lot simply by getting information from the internet, from YouTube videos, from podcasts, from all sorts of information sources that are just as valid that would have been, say, 25 years ago before the advent of the internet, that was only very much accessible to a few people. I want you to sort of think about what the information was actually like when I was growing up. You got information from the radio. Maybe you got it from the one news channel or news information show. We didn't even have news channels at that time, but the one show for an hour. And now the information we get, and it was very sort of filtered, and you didn't get access to higher education unless you went to higher education. Now there is a plethora. There is so much competition, so much space, so much information from different sources that are completely valid, completely good source of information, whether it being on YouTube or whatever, on any particular platform. And we have to change how we view the way that we actually do theory, the way that we actually do science. And I know for a lot of people that's sort of hard to admit that this is a changing landscape than what we had. And the changing landscape, in some respects, it has actually added to the legitimacy of these various different institutions, like educational institutions and higher education. They're more important today than they ever have been because of the the messiness of information that exists, right? However, and so what do I mean by the messiness of information? There's a lot of shady people out there, lots of shady people doing not very good things, trying to come across as being legitimate, and there is a ton of them. We all know, we've seen this happen, and they're not legitimate, right? Like they're not necessarily good people. How do we know what is good people and we don't? That's a hard thing. One way that we can sort of determine that is with institutions that they affiliate with, kind of like the way that it always, for a long time, is you look to see the institutions that they're affiliated with and see if that is somebody that you can trust, right? Like if you're part of a, a synagogue or a church that you went to that you trust, then yeah, okay, you could trust them, right? So the same sort of thing is playing out today. And so those institutions are even more important. However, I think that um, a lot of people are downplaying the importance of the democratization of information that's available at this moment. The the amount of sheer great information that's available, and um, a lot of people actually don't need to get the conventional education that a lot of us sort of think that they actually need to get because they could get that information elsewhere, right? So, in one sense, um, it's speeding up. The information's getting more intense. We need to keep up. I mean, the stuff that my kids are learning is much more advanced than what I would have ever learned. Mind you, they're going to a different school, but they're learning a lot more stuff than what I would have ever learned or we ever learned. Um, the intensity is increasing, but also you can know where to get information if you are a good sort of seeker of information. Now, does that does that now the trouble? with all of this. And I agree with it. I think the right people under the right circumstances can do really well, and they don't necessarily need to get an education. They can seek out those things. Now, here's the challenge, though. We need to look at human behavior, and human behavior, we're very much human. The question that I almost always ask in my class is how many people just go to the library just to go learn things, just to go explore for the sake of exploring things, and almost nobody does, right? And we have to acknowledge that the human behavior thing of things is not just about providing information. It's not just about access to information, but it's the guiding, it's the storytelling, it's getting people excited about information and knowledge that they could pursue. And I think that's becoming an increasingly important thing, is having storytellers, having people that will guide individuals through interesting things that is not necessarily the information that we grew up with, right? It's not memorization. It's not nothing like that, but it's to train people to be curious about the world, to sort of interact with the world and not be afraid to interact with the world. I think those things are more important. And I also think sort of leading by example, by showing other people, is very important. That you could do something that um, that you're afraid of doing, to pursue those particular things by exploring, by doing things where you might need information and seek those particular things out. Um, I think that's important. I think the idea that uh, higher education is dying is, in the way that we understood it before, is true. Higher education is not dying in the way that I'm sort of pursuing and suggesting, that we have to change the institutions to recognize some of these things. We have to say, wait a minute, we're in a changing world, and there is a lot of really interesting, important things that exist in this world that are beyond what the existing institutions will say, and we need to acknowledge them. All right. Hopefully you got something from this. Take care. Have a wonderful day.